Welcome back to BT. Good to have this man, international journalist Mohamed Fahmy, back here on the BT couch. Mohamed, you are here at a very important time because of the story out of Myanmar this week where two journalists were jailed and sentenced to 7 years in prison. Many people calling this sentencing a travesty. What happened here, and what is the challenge we're seeing all over again?
Well, I've been following this story very closely with the Fahmy Foundation, with my associates, and it's horrific. I was sentenced to 7 years. So when this conviction happened earlier this week, we were all figuring out how to support them. And when you're in prison, the same way it happened to me, the support that journalists get is the lifeline. That's what keeps them going, keeps their morale going. These are very good journalists who are doing their job, and now they're sentenced to 7 years in Myanmar, Burma.
And just for some context, what happened specifically with this case that led to the conviction?
Well, these guys, it's a journalist's dream. The police set them up. They gave them secret documents, and like any journalist would do, they would jump on the story, and then the police arrested them for having these documents, which is a total framing. And they are now in jail, and they were reporting a very important story, the massacre and genocide of thousands of Rohingya Muslims in Burma. And Reuters did a great job, and these two journalists specifically reported a story about a mass grave, the killing of 10 people, and these people were buried. And basically, the story was published while they were in prison. Reuters went with the story while these guys were in prison to show what sort of a good job they've done, and now they're paying the price for this.
Well, you've taken a look at journalists on the front line around the world with your work with the Fahmy Foundation. How do we prevent this from happening and create press freedom so these important stories can be told and they don't have to fear the repercussion of convictions of 7-year sentences?
Well, it's just got to be a group effort. Watchdog NGOs do a great job in keeping these governments at check. But we also have a role. People who are an ocean away can support through, hashtags, signing petitions. In my case, when I was in Egypt, these petitions were used in the court. They were used by the media to tell the judge and to tell the international community that this guy is innocent. And that's what we need to do with these two journalists, Wah and Kiao, and keep the pressure on. And Canada has a huge role as well.
We learned a great deal from your ordeal in 2015. You were pardoned after your conviction. 438 days you spent in prison. But the thing that we saw was this social media movement of people talking about this story. Canada has a role. What can we do if people want to get involved and stop this from happening?
The Canadian government, for starters, in 2007, placed sanctions on the Myanmar government. Trade sanctions. And when the Myanmar government improved their humanitarian approach and released hundreds of political prisoners in 2012, Canada eased the sanctions. Now, this June, Canada again is reviewing the Myanmar file to see how they're going to respond to the genocide that the Rohingya faced. And basically, what Canada needs to do, and I hope they do that, is tell the Myanmar government that you need to release these prisoners, for one, and improve the humanitarian record and take care of these Rohingya Muslims. 750,000 Rohingya Muslims had to basically leave and go to Bangladesh. So it's about how these governments affect the entire society around them. We saw what happened in Syria with the Syrian, exodus all over the world, and it affects you right here in Vancouver, even if you're an ocean away, basically. So we got to stay. We got to put the pressure. Governments respond to sanctions. They're very fragile, and I think there's a lot we can do. Year
by year, how many journalists still get jailed for just doing their job? What do you see?
Currently, there's more than 250 journalists jailed worldwide. This year, 40 journalists were killed while doing their job, according to CPJ, Committee to Protect Journalists. And I think it's a very, very dangerous job. At the moment, Canada last year went down in the ranking of the World Press Freedom Index to 22 in 2017. This year, Canada is at 18. And the issue in Canada here, we don't throw journalists in prison and torture them, but there's an issue with the privacy and sources. Some government bodies here had forced journalists to turn around their sources. In the case of Ben Maku from Vice, which is still ongoing, and many journalists in Quebec were spied on by the police. So these are issues we need to really take serious, and I think Mr. Trudeau does a great job and is outspoken about the protection of journalists here.
Well, you've been a huge advocate for this with the Fahmy Foundation. We should mention Mohamed Fahmy speaking tomorrow, TEDx Vancouver, TEDxVancouver.com, over at the Chance Center at UBC to hear more about this and the fight for press freedom. Always good to have you on, Mohamed.
And you are speaking too, and there's still tickets available, and I hope people can come down, and I'd like to meet a lot of the students from UBC that I really missed, and I think I'm excited to be part of TEDx this year. And Christopher Bennett is doing a great job, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, big team working, all volunteer run. It's going to be a great one.